I've been working on trying to get some video editing skills down, and for now, I figured out of the ones that I was going to start, kind of just as the initial attempt at doing it, is a fight, an easier one, because I'm also planning on doing I'll put up the Jalal versus Lexus one probably after this one, because this one will be easier, because there's less to work with right now, whereas the other one there's a whole series behind it to kind of really drive at. So, Yami versus Zenon, and I know this has been a topic as of lately because Yami and Dante's fight, and the fact that the only reason that Yami couldn't take Dante down was because of his regeneration, and then Zenon showing up, and there's been people like arguing who's stronger between Zenon and Dante. So I figured this would be a easy to use one as of right now because we haven't seen the full extent of Zenon, but we still understand to a degree what his abilities are. We've essentially seen Yami after the time skip at max. I don't imagine Yami's going to kind of just be like, oh yeah, I had like 8 different special moves up my sleeve. Like maybe he had one super ace move he couldn't use for reasons, but for the most part, I think it's best to assume right now that that was his 100%. And Zenon should be relatively close to Dante. So I think that this is actually a pretty fair fight in all honesty. Because Dante's big thing over Yami was the fact that he had regeneration. Like besides that, their like level of feats and like just the way that they were kind of keeping up with each other seemed relatively fine. It was mainly Dante's recklessness that kind of screwed him over in that fight. But straight down to kind of like their abilities. Like you have Yami, like he's got his darkness magic. He's got general attacks. Like he's got his lightless slash, black blade. But the things that are dangerous for almost anybody are going to be dangerous towards Xenon. Stuff like his black hole, death thrust, dimension slash. Because Xenon is kind of in a bad spot with Yami, at least as of current. Who knows when he gets more abilities like later on. But when you look at the functionality of characters' abilities and like how their abilities operate and like how exactly they utilize these abilities, it says a lot into their characters. Like I said, Dante has a high level of regeneration, so he was able to be reckless. He didn't have to be careful really when he fought, not getting hit by attacks because he just heal up. I mean, look at someone like Bond from Seven Deadly Sins back when he still had his whole immortality and regeneration. It was essentially the same thing. You have one of these characters who just it's like, why would I even care about not getting hit if it doesn't really mean anything to me? So when it comes down to it, like, okay, well, what is Xenon's thing? Because Xenon's, as we've seen, has some form of spatial or dimensional magic, but he's also primarily because unlike unlike Dante, like Dante primarily used his devil magic with the gravity, but Xenon and Vonica primarily use their own like magic they're born with. Xenon's being bone magic, and again, we haven't seen the full extent of it, so this could easily change later in the arc. But as of right now, I will say that with what we've seen, the whole big thing of Dante's bones are that they're overwhelming. They would overwhelm the target. There's a lot of them. They're just coming at you in like a big wave. And when we saw go and attack some of them with the Spirit of Zephyr, they would regenerate faster than the damage that he could pretty much put into them. So, like I said, it's overwhelming the way that his bones work because they're just going to keep spreading, but also any damage you do to them is going to fix itself. It's kind of like the idea with Dante with regeneration, but it's more into Xenon's attack that is both an offense and a defense because he's got these regenerating and constantly spreading bones that are going to be making it harder for enemies to even get close to him or their attacks to hit him, while at the same time spreading said bones in order to attack them. So when it comes down to like Zenon would be a very dangerous character for most people to fight, just because of like obviously his abilities with his spatial manipulation, and on top of that, his bones. But Yami, I think, has a very good clean edge to him against Zenon that he kind of got screwed over against Dante, because Dante was a bad matchup for Yami. Dante was a very bad matchup for Yami, the way that Yami's powers worked. So, if you put Yami up against Zenon, like stuff like, oh yeah, the fast regeneration of the bones, the mass spreading of the bones, it's not really going to matter to something like Dimension Slash. Like, maybe it could become more than Yami's black hole could absorb, but when it comes to Dimension Slash, it'll just go through it, and it's not the same as like when you essentially think about Spirit of Zephyr, and I think the easiest way to really describe it is how I've been doing it is Uryu Seely Schneider from Bleach. You know, it's constantly, this vibrating blade is going to be cutting through stuff at a very high speed, but if you were able to match or overcome said, like, levels of, cutting speed, then it's not really going to do anything. But that speed is irrelevant to Dimension Slash, because it's not like, oh, I'm going to hit and then the two forces collide, and then it's to see which one withstands the other. No, it's Dimension Slash. It's a spatial cutting move, so it's going to go right through it. As well as Dimension Slash is going to cut through Zenon's spatial manipulation. Maybe it'll be named differently. I mean, I've seen it also called Dimension Magic by some people, but I mean, Dimension Slash, so it's not really going to matter unless there's some other weird kind of wording to it that give it some other effect that would prevent Dimension Slash from doing anything. As well as Death Thrust. I think Death Thrust as well is pretty dangerous for Zenon. Like, I think Death Thrust for Zenon's style is actually probably one of the worst setups other than Dimension Slash, because the Dimension Slash is going right through. But the thing about Death Thrust is it's essentially just a hyper force thrust. It's not like, it's not like, oh yeah, I'm going to lunge a giant mass of dark energy at somebody. I mean, he's using his mana zone to hyper buff like his physical strength, and he's sending it in. And as well as he was able to hit Dante outside of his like spatial manipulation when he was using gravity to warp space around, so attacks would kind of miss around him. So essentially, like, if Zenon went up and put his bones up, and sure, some of the bones could block the force, but it's not a physical thing. So any of those cracks and openings in between his bone kind of like bulwark or barricade anything puts up, the force is going to slip through it and eventually hit him. It's not going to be as directly like threatening as something like Dimension Slash, but it's still very, very bad for his setup. And the fact if it was able to hit Dante outside of, his whole spatial warping, then it's going to go and hit through Zenon's as well. Yami is actually, I think, simply a bad matchup for Zenon, whereas Dante, I think, was a bad matchup for Yami. So when it comes down to this match, at least as of right now, I still see Yami winning. I think Yami would have beaten Zenon, and I think he would have beaten Vonica too, just because Vonica, unlike the recklessness of Dante, I think she likes to take the damage. She just doesn't seem that she really cares about, like, oh man, I'm going to get hit by an attack. But it's more like that she's just waiting for it to happen, because obviously with blood manipulation, that's just going to make her attacks more potent and more deadly. But, yeah, I'm just going to go with Yami over Zenon for now. Like I said, that could easily change when we see all-out Zenon. Maybe he's going to have attacks that Yami will just get overwhelmed by, stuff that's just too big for him to handle. Because that's one of the things about Yami that I've been wanting to kind of just see improve, is Yami's biggest thing when it comes to like his fighting capability is the fact that all his abilities combo together really well. The synergy between Yami's abilities is the biggest thing about him, because all of his moves go really well into setting up a different move. And so his attacks, he doesn't really have like a lot of large scale like abilities. So if you had something like imagine if Zenon had something kind of like what's his name from Naruto, oh my god, what's the bone dude's name? How am I friend Kimimaro? Kimimaro at the end when he had that giant bone force, something like that Yami would just have trouble kind of like handling on such a large scale. That's something I could see like Zenon having if he ends up having it. Well, if he ends up having such an ability that he would be able to really utilize it in a useful way against Yami. So it's mostly a waiting game right now. I just wanted to give this as my current kind of like thoughts, mainly because like I said, I'm trying out editing, and I want the editing videos to look cleaner. Like this video I think was really easy just because it's mostly just talking about current events. Like when I do my Jalal and Laxus video, it's probably going to take a good amount longer just because I'm going to have to break parts up in talking instead of just one long one. I'm going to try my best to do it in one long one, but for the most part, this one is way more easy because it's using very straightforward stuff. Like outside of like Dimension Slash and like is Yami's black hole, we don't have to look at a lot of like current arc stuff because current arc Yami just completely dwarfed like feats that Yami had before. Like look at like the first time he used Dimension Slash versus him using it now, where it's like it's just another attack then versus before when it looked like it took him way more strain and way more effort just to get out. So anyway, other than that, comment below. I'm gonna put this up hopefully on Saturday as well as the Laxus versus Jalal video, and then yeah, and then people hopefully can give me their opinions on it. Like I said, this is as of current and what I believe, rather than like after this whole arc when we see the full extent of all these characters. That'll be a whole different story. We'll have to come back to it, and I'll give like a okay now that we know stuff kind of update version of this match. But for now, I'm going to go Yami. I think Yami just has a good power advantage over Zenon overall. It's like I said, Dimension Slash going through, like, okay, cool, you have spatial stuff, Dimension Slash. Okay, cool, you have all these bones that have high regeneration and are fast. Cool, Dimension Slash. I think, especially, like, with how fast Yami's depicted, like, Yami is depicted as a very fast character, that even if I would say Zenon seems faster, that Yami wouldn't be just like, I don't think Yami would be overwhelmed by the speed. I think Yami could be overwhelmed by sheer like quantity, like sheer AoE of his bone abilities, but I don't think his speed, at least right now, would be too much for Yami to deal with. So other than that, though, comment below, thumbs up the video from the like button, subscribe button, and check out my other videos. But other than that, I appreciate everyone who's already subscribed, and I thank you all for listening. Bye.